Welcome back to my little cooking show. It's kind of lonely here without Tessa, right? Today we're going to experiment with something. We're going to make something up. I was at the store the other day and I saw some beautiful tomatoes. They just looked beautiful and sunny on a very frozen morning. And I thought about how I could get that clear flavor of tomato into a cookie. So first of all, what I did with the tomatoes is that I threw them into some boiling water and I counted maybe to 30, maybe it was 60. You want to see the skin start to peel off. Took them out of the water, I ran some cold water on them, peeled them. That's how you get the peel off. And then I cut them up and I seeded them. I don't know why I did this. This is just what I did. Seeded them, I put them in my magic bullet thing, and I got this beautiful, wonderful smelling broth, even though those tomatoes weren't great. So this is the second round on this. We're building a recipe. We're trying things out. We're testing recipes. So the first time I did it, I just used that beautiful clear broth, and I used about a quarter cup. And they did come out a beautiful color, but you couldn't quite taste the tomato. And I thought, well, something that I could add would be a little bit of lemon zest. That would be nice to bring it out. But what I did in the end was that I made a sugar syrup of what was left with the tomato. And I would say maybe there was about a quarter cup of tomato left. And then I put in maybe 2 tablespoons of, I'll write this down, so it's experimental, 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I made a bit of a syrup here. And it smells lovely tomato. What I didn't want is to get that sort of cooked tomato flavor. So that's what we have for the tomato. For the base, we're going to use 1.5 sticks of butter. And we're going to use 3/4 cup of sugar. So 3/4 cup of sugar, I'm using 100 grams, which is 1/2 cup of white sugar. And then I'm going to put in some, you can see it in there, some light brown sugar. Yesterday when I tried this, I did the dark brown sugar because I just like that old-fashioned feeling. And by that old-fashioned, I mean my grandmother used to eat tomatoes with sugar. Tomatoes, of course, are a fruit, but she would put sprinkled sugar on them. So I had this sort of old-fashioned brown sugar tomato type concept. Here's what I'll say. The tomato flavor, because we don't want that cooked solid tomato paste flavor, was light, and so the dark brown sugar almost overpowered it. Well, it did, because I didn't have enough syrup. So I'm going to try the light brown. I'm going to stick with that, but I'm only going to put 1/4 cup. And what I did was, I don't know if this is 1/4 cup or not, but I did 50 grams of light brown sugar. So we have 1.5 sticks of butter, we have 100 grams of white sugar, we have 50 grams of light brown sugar. We're going to put that in the blender, not the blender, we're going to put it in the old KitchenAid thing, and we're going to mix that up. So when you're creating a recipe, you have to think about what is the texture of your cookies? What do you want to do? And you're going to come down to the leavening question. Leavening, baking soda or baking powder, or no leavening. I'm choosing no leavening here because I want these to be like, sort of like those round, solid, like Dory Greenspan does them. Maybe that is called a galette in her beurre and sel section. So I'm not going to use any leavening, but if you wanted to, you could use baking powder, and this is roughly what's going to happen. Baking powder is going to help rise. Baking soda is going to help spread. So if you like to have your chocolate chip cookies that are spread and crispy on the edges, which I do, you would put baking soda in there, and that's going to help them spread a little. I don't want these to spread really. I don't know that that's going to benefit these. And rising, I'm not a huge fan of cakey cookies, but you could put a little in there. I'm not going to. We're just going to see how this goes. Yesterday I did not, and I was fine with the texture of them. So this is our butter and our sugar, and we're going to let that whirl. Okay, so we've let that mix about 3 minutes. Now while that's mixing, you should prepare your flour, or just actually you should have everything ready to begin with. I'm going to use 2 cups of flour. Why not? So I'm going to say 2 cups of flour is about 240 grams. When you're learning how to make recipes and when you're learning things, it was always hard for me to grasp exactly how many grams, how many cups, because you're going to see varying things in recipes. I have tons of recipe books, and it'll say 2 cups of flour, and then the gram will be off. Well, of course, there's different kinds of flour. But I'm just gonna go with good old King Arthur, and they're telling me that a cup of flour is 120 grams, and that's okay by me. So that's what we're gonna do. Where's my spoon? So we've weighed out 100 and, well, 254. So we're going to use 240 grams. Oops. Roughly. No, just stick to it, 240 grams. I am kind of a stickler for this, as you should be. Science, you don't mess around with science. Okay, now yesterday when I was developing this recipe, and it is still developing, I used a half teaspoon salt. Well, that was too much. I could taste that salt. When you're doing something like the fabulous salt and pepper, sugar and spice cookie, which is the biggest hit I have every holiday season. It's in the Dory book, and for some reason, that is the cookie everybody loves. You're gonna use more salt. You're gonna sprinkle salt on top. That's not what this cookie is about. So I'm going to use a 4 teaspoon salt. 2. And I'm going to use an entire teaspoon of ground fennel, because I love ground fennel. And fennel and tomato, I think go together wonderful. Also, fennel has a bit of an anise flavor. If you don't like that, then you're not gonna like this. A little bit of a licorice flavor, right? I'm putting the whole dang teaspoon in there because that's what I'm gonna do. Teaspoon, maybe half. Some nice little, yeah, I'm gonna put a whole teaspoon in there, screw it. Some nice thing to learn about cleaning your grinder. I have a spice grinder, which is a coffee grinder, just a Braun coffee grinder. It's lasted for years. I don't normally grind coffee because I just get the Bustelo in the can, but friends brought me some coffee from Hawaii, and so I'm doing the coffee. I don't want coffee in this. Great way to clean your grinder is to use rice, to grind some rice up. I didn't make that up. Everything I know, I just learned on the internet. Okay, so 2 cups of flour, teaspoon of my ground fennel seeds, yum, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Do we need anything else in here? I don't think so. Remember, I'm not using any leavening. Here's the point, you would put leavening in though, and go ahead if you want to. Nobody's stopping you. Try it. I used to read about people testing recipes and I thought, like, oh my gosh, testing recipes, wouldn't that be, I'm like, no, what's the fun of it? Silly me. We're thinking something. What are we gonna add in this lovely mess? So we talked about, did we talk about eggs? Here's something about eggs. Egg whites versus whole eggs versus egg yolks. An egg yolk is going to add moisture. It's going to add moisture. It's going to add fat, of course. An egg white is going to dry some of the moisture in there. It's going to add a drier type effect. Since I'm using the tomato, yesterday when I used the tomato juice, I just did whites. And it was okay. Today, because we're making stuff up, I'm gonna put the whole dang egg in there. I'm gonna mix that up. Scrape down side of the bowl. You can easily do this in a hand mixer. I did a hand mixer for years. And that, well, not for years, for like the first 6 months that I cooked, and then my daughter sent me this KitchenAid mixer, and it was, I wept. I just wept. I was so excited. I couldn't imagine I'd ever have something like that. Oh, that's sweet. Okay, so what are we doing? Okay, now what else are we gonna add to this? I'm gonna add some vanilla. Because this is a weird kind of tomato-y cookie, which should just be a sweet sort of flavor. Something about flavors, and I've said this before, when you add a flavor, it doesn't necessarily have to taste like that flavor, although I do want it to taste tomato-y. It can just be something added that you're like, oh, what is that? That's interesting. I think we talked about that with the violet. I'm gonna add vanilla because this is a cookie. We're used to cookies having vanilla in them. It's just a mellow sort of roundabout flavor. So we're gonna put some in there, and I'm gonna put a half teaspoon in. And now is the time to do it. Is that a half teaspoon? Yes. Here we go. My mom just used to measure it in the cap. Cap's kind of grody though. Don't worry, there's alcohol in it. And now comes the exciting part. The tomato. Okay, let's look at this. Oh my God. That tastes great. I wish I had some lemon zest, but it's too freaking cold to go out there and get it now. Oh my God, I'm gonna dump this whole thing in there. So should we weigh it so we know what we're talking about? Okay, so let's see how much we have so we can remember that. 49 grams. Okay, so what's gonna happen here? I'm gonna dump this whole thing in there. Yeah, that's a lot of liquid. We're gonna have to add more flour. Because I'm not using leavening and such, I'm not really gonna have to balance that out with anything. Let's give it a whirl. I'm excited about this. So, bam. Don't be shy. Just throw it in there. Throw it in there all at once. Mix it up. If it's too soft, I'm gonna add more flour. Not rocket science, whoops. But it is science. Yeah, I'm gonna add a half cup more flour. Another conversation you'll have with yourself. Eggs or no eggs, leaven or no leaven. What is the form these cookies are gonna take? I like to roll cookies. I like to roll these kind of cookies, and I'll show you a way to do that, which I'm not very good at. I like to just put them in a roll, put them in the fridge, and then cut them. And they're not perfectly round, but I don't really care. They look a bit like paving stones. And by the way, this t-shirt is from Danny's little bar in Bucktown back in the aughts. Here's my dough. I'm gonna try to make a little round thing. I mean, you could flour your surface and roll it out. That's probably the best thing. This is how the pros do it. Put that in there. You see that? Yep. Bend over the paper. Tighten it like this. Hold the ruler, and then you're going to pull it like so, and you're gonna get a roll. And it should be, if you're pulling it tight enough, it should be a round roll. Mine usually isn't. I don't know how you do that. Maybe you know how to do that. You can tell me. That's the idea anyway. Okay, we're back. So here we have our roll. So just cut off the ends here. Meanwhile, while this was in, isn't that pretty? While this was in the freezer, I have preheated my oven to 350. So we're going to try, you see that? We're going to try to make a 1/4 inch cuts here. Yeah, that's nice. And you can see that they are a little bit like paving stones. And you could also roll this out and make it round. Now, because there is no baking soda or baking powder in these aren't going to spread. You're not going to have to worry about that. So let's see if we can get these little babies all on one sheet, one roll per sheet. It's so much fun to experiment with stuff because it's tactile as well. You know, the difference between the egg yolk and the egg white, I can really feel that. We're gonna pop these in the oven, and I'm going to look at them at 12 minutes, but they do take a little bit longer. So I'm gonna look at 12 minutes, I'm gonna expect maybe 14. But these are 14 minutes. They're browned on the edges. Let's put them on the cooling thing, and we shall see if any of that tomato flavor, these are basically gonna taste like sugar cookies. I mean, with something special in them, which is tomato. Let's give one a try. I'll give this one a try. That's a really nice cookie. I definitely taste the fennel. I would like a little lemon zest in here. And definitely the tomatoes in there. That's it. I hope you will experiment. That's all it is. Find a basic recipe and then throw things in and see how it works out. Change your leavening up, change your egg whites toward egg yolks, and see what you get. And you're gonna come up with, this is how all things are created in baking. Sometimes it's a mistake, but I'll keep working on my tomato cookies, and you keep working on your whatever you are doing. Yeah, thanks for stopping by.